right, guys, we're going to start. So I'm going to hit start broadcast, and then you two will be the only voices that people hear. All right? John, you need to go?
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
T-minus 3 seconds.
Oh, no.
Starting broadcast.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Designing Competence Workshop. My name's Kate Smith. I'm the Director of Outreach over at Dozuki. And today we've got Sean Brown, President of the Digital Mentor Group. We want to just thank so much for such a great turnout today. We have people coming in from not just the United States and Canada, but also Europe, South America, Africa, Asia, and Australia. So we just want to thank you all so much for being here. Before we start with the workshop, we just wanted to cover some ground rules or just certain ways that you can engage in the workshop. One way is that feel free to type out any questions that you might have at any time during the workshop. You'll just want to type your questions into the GoToWebinar interface, and there we'll answer as many questions as possible through that avenue. And another alternative, if we happen to not answer one of your questions or get around to it, you can also contact myself or Sean directly through our emails with any specific follow-ups, comments, feedback, anything you'd like. So again, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Kate Emma Smith. I'm going to be your workshop host today. You can email me at kate@dozuki.com. And I know a lot of you are familiar with Dozuki. We'll talk a little bit about Dozuki and what we do as a platform and a software later on in the workshop. But what we generally are is a visual online platform for everything from work instructions, training manuals, product support, and the like. So we'll get to show you kind of our bread and butter and what we do as we proceed. And Sean, would you like to introduce yourself?
I am Sean Brown. I'm president of Digital Mentor Group, and I've been involved in on-the-job training for about 25 or 26 years. And we're really working with a large number of companies in pharmaceuticals, construction materials, retail organizations, and we're working to produce productivity improvements, to reduce waste, and improve the bottom line for our customers.
Great, thanks so much. So we met Sean Dozuki. We partnered up with the Digital Mentor Group during our beta version, and since that time we've discovered a lot of ways that our organizations are aligned, hence why this is going to be such a great partnership for the workshop. Over the years, we've definitely learned from each other and provided solutions on both ends for our clientele. And Sean, I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell the folks out there what your latest project has been, what you guys have been working on, and what you've been excited about recently.
Well, it's not a corporate project. It's actually a project with UNICEF and Salama Shield Foundation. The photograph that you see on the screen right now is a photograph that really changed my life in many different ways. These people are in northern Uganda. They're called artisanal miners. Artisanal miners are whole family units, sometimes including some very young children. They earn about 50 cents a day, and they are some of the most disadvantaged people on earth. So what they do normally is to go out to unoccupied land and set to work digging for gold or diamonds or anything they can find. It's all manual work using picks, shovels, and kitchen sieves. The project that we're working on with Salama Shield and UNICEF has two objectives, basically. One is to build some safe mining practices. As you'll notice in this photograph, no one has personal protective equipment. No one's wearing any masks. They're not wearing steel-toed boots or anything like that. So we want to see if we can find some ways to change that. And the other part of the project is actually to look at building some skills, knowledge, and experience that will prepare them for more stable, safer, and rewarding work. So when I saw this photograph, I mean, literally, how could you turn your eyes away from that? So that's why I wanted to get involved.
Definitely, definitely. So that's I think a great lead into really our topic for the workshop is designing competence. So what we're trying to do with defining this competence, our focus is how you can empower your employees to the organizational tasks, that you've defined as most critical to your company. And that, you know, obviously covers process mapping, safety certainly is an issue, and then also, again, empowering and engaging your workforce. And so this will require designing competence, again, identifying your known processes, conducting critical risk assessment, developing standardized work instructions, where's a little bit where Dozuki comes in, examining the what, how, and the why, again, of the tasks, of the what your objectives are to your company, and then building community ownership and organizational competence. So that's where we're going with that. And today we're going to cover, Sean, he's going to cover for us the process mapping, the engaging your employees, I'll take a little bit of the standardizing instructions and the why behind the task. So these are kind of the 4 points that we'd like to hit today with the designing competence. So Sean, I guess the question that we want to ask is, what is a known process?
Well, before we get to that, I want to take a little bit of time and talk about one of our clients.
Okay.
We have a client who was losing approximately $7 million a year in employee acquisition costs. It was costing them about $5,800 to source every employee that they hired, and they were hiring approximately 1,200 new employees a year. And to maintain a workforce of 500, that was a lot of work to hire these people. And so what we did was we wanted to reorient their approach to hiring and to orientation and training. So what we really wanted to develop was a new culture of putting people first. And we find that organizations, when they put their employees first, they get the best out of them. So like we're going to cover in the webinar today, we first conducted a known process review of the hiring, orientation, and the training system they were using. Based on that snapshot, we recommended and reconfigured the orientation program for new hires. We built what we called work readiness and preparation training, which is basically training in simulation. And then we built an on-the-job training program for them. We wrote new standard work instructions built on best safe practices. We even introduced a graduation ceremony for the new hires, so they got to actually graduate to their jobs. And the reaction we got was really quite tremendous. We did a post-project analysis and monitored the turnover numbers very carefully. In the first 3 months, turnovers dropped from 120% to 50%, and the full ROI was achieved in about 3 months. Now the turnover is about 10% in an industry that has a traditionally high turnover rate. So among the lessons that we learned from this project was to build a positive perception for the new hires, train them to competence, and write accessible standard work instructions that were easily understood. So we used lots of pictures and lots of clear language.
Great, great. I think to launch off of your story, we do kind of want to open up kind of our audience, what their experience is with putting people first and how they handle their training. So we're going to launch onto the GoToWebinar a poll, what forms of training you do. And options are classroom, on the job, computer-based training, video-based training, and job aids. So we'd like to, just hear back, and especially after hearing Sean's story, really thinking about your own practices for sure. Okay. And so again, back to the defining known processes. So Sean, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what that means and your experiences with known processes.
Okay, so one of the things we found very worthwhile was to build a known process, to do a snapshot, take a picture basically of the operations in the organization. So we did that, and we made an assessment of all the things that the employees were doing. We chose a simple tool. You can do actually Post-it notes, you can use a whiteboard, a blackboard, and some chalk, anything you want. We used a process called Inspiration, which is a tool that we actually repurposed to build work instructions from it. It's actually a tool that's used to train people who have learning disabilities. But we saw it and we said, wow, we can use this as a way to actually define the job. So we went out and looked at all the operations in the organization, built the snapshot, and we've got some examples of that that we're going to show you later on. And that was the first step. And then when we did the snapshot, we figured out the scope and scale of the project, and then we launched into the work.
Great. So talking about process mapping, we've got a kind of an example, a sample production company example of a known processing map. And so as you can see, there's 4 branches. We've got product selection, order entry, shipping, receiving, and so there's a lot going on here. So maybe you can kind of contextualize this very large tree for us, Sean.
Okay, well, this is what we saw in this sample organization that we're working on. And the thing that we liked about the process map was we could go deeper, we could take deeper dives every time we went through a level. So, for example, we'd have the shipping process that we started to look at, and you'll see that over here to the right. And then we took a look at it a bit more carefully. So maybe you can move to the next slide.
Okay.
And we identified that there was, in the shipping area, there was a whole bunch of things going on. There was package transfer, packaging, fulfillment, which means you're filling orders. There was a number of things involved in each one of these. So we built training around fulfillment, packaging, and package transfer. So the fulfillment program took care of things like stock keeping units, warehouse layout, product families, and SKUs. Packaging went into that level of detail there. And the package transfer included the carriers and what each of the 3 main carriers required to package their products. So then we went a little bit deeper again. Next slide, please. And we took a look at the packaging process itself. Now this company uses an envelope, a bag, and 3 different types of boxes. So one of the things that the employees needed to know is which boxes went with the product that they were packaging. The next thing that we looked at was placement. So we saw that they were securing using peanuts, bubble wrap, and cardboard. And then they wrapped up the boxes using tape and labels. The labels came from the carriers, either FedEx or the USPS, something like that. So that's what we dealt with. So if we take a look at the process map, we could actually do a deep dive on each one of the operations in the company and find out just what levels of knowledge, skill, and experience the employees need to have in order to be competent in them.
Great.
So this actually defined what good job looked like.
Definitely. And just to take a short detour, we got the results back from the poll that we sent out. What forms of training do you do from our audience? And they're pretty much across the board on all 5 of the options. However, the largest in the audience today seems to be training on the job with a whopping 73%.
Wow.
So we've got at classroom at about 49, computer-based training and video-based training in, computer-based training in the 50s, and then video-based and job aids in the 30s. So that's where we're at. So thank you so much for everyone who voted on the poll.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so now that we have a kind of an understanding of our audience, we want to go. I'd rather go into kind of rating our tasks by components. One of the problems that I saw with the map that you're describing, Sean, and perhaps our audience, they might have seen it too, is that everything on the process map appears to have the same value. And so if I were an employee working at this particular site, I wouldn't know, if there is a hierarchy, the value between certain tasks, why I'm really doing it. It just seems like one very large tree. And so could you speak to how we differentiate between tasks and how we perhaps rank the tasks?
Well, yes, it's very important that we figure out that if there is a risk factor involved in any of the activities. So if we take a look at how we define that in the next slide, We look at it in terms of 4 areas. 1 is severity, 2 is repetition, 3 is probability, and 4 is skill. So every task that we identify in the process map gets run through these 4 filters. So we've chosen some arbitrary numbers here for dollar values. You can change them depending on the task that you're working on and the equipment you're using. But in this case, in severity, we've given 4 ratings, 1, 2, 4, and 6. So 1 is a low risk of severity of injury or illness or property damage, all the way up through permanent disability, loss of life, or extensive losses to the structure. So looking at each task, we have to decide how severe the injuries and illnesses could be. In repetition, we looked at 3 levels again, 1, 2, and 3, 1 for less than once a working day, and that may require a job aid in addition to training. Repeated once a day, but no more than 8 times a day, so that's once an hour usually, and repeated more than once an hour. So the higher ratings go to repeating more than once an hour, because the more often you do the task, the more often you're risking the severity of injury.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at likelihood of loss, which is probability. Again, 1, 2, or 3, whether less average or greater average of loss. So we ran it through those filters. We also added another filter to the process, and that was skill, and that was looking at individualizing the training, looking at the individuals involved in performing the task and their level of skill. So someone who had a unskilled ability was given a rating of 4. So we looked at that and we did some calculations around that.
Mm-hmm. So here, we've created the slide with the tasks. So just similar to our sample production company where we showed, this kind of processing map. Here we've got those specific tasks that we've pulled out of there and then gave it a total score. So this is kind of, you're seeing it in action.
Right, and what we decided to do in this particular case was that the biggest risk was in the wrapping process. So we gave that a score of 36. That would mean that would be the first training program we'd start to build.
Mm-hmm.
Then we work our way down to items of lower risk, and so we picked wrapping as the number 1 skill for this process.
Great. Mm-hmm. So kind of going into maybe the packaging process as our sample company. What skills would an employee require for the packaging process?
Well, we looked at it and we did a bit of identification. If we flip over, we've got a series of slides that will talk about that.
Mm-hmm. So this is the skills, knowledge, experience, and behavior model that we're looking at for the defining the known processes.
Yeah, so we call this a SCEB analysis. What are the skills, the knowledge, experience, and behavior that the employee requires in order to perform the task? So let's take a look at skills first of all.
Great.
So we looked at 3 different skills that the employee had to be good at. 1 was consistent box selection. That was based on the size of the product being packaged. Correct tape placement, so it wouldn't damage the product, wouldn't damage the box, and would not interfere with the labels. And appropriate packaging choices as well. So those are the 3 skills that we identified here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then so continuing on to that model, then certainly knowledge is an important factor to consider.
Right. Now, one of the big concerns with this whole project was determining that the customer would have a positive open box experience. So open box experience is matching up what the package looked like when they received it from in the mail or from FedEx, for example,
mm-hmm.
and the perceptions they'd already built in dealing with the company. So the company had spent a lot of time, effort, and resources to make sure that they had a good website and that the customers could interact with the website easily, make their choices, and pay for them. So, but the only contact that the customer had would be the box that they received in the mail. So yes, they looked at the website, but their perceptions were formed by the product, quality, and the quality of the packaging. So we wanted to make sure that they understood that what the employees did on the job had a huge effect on the open box experience that the customer had when they received the container.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then I guess that would lead straight into our next one, experiences with practicing.
Yes. So what we wanted to do here, this is not the experience that the learner has going into the training program. This is the experience the learner will gain during the training program. Mm-hmm. So what you're starting to do here is to define what the activities will be within the training program itself. So these are defining the things, the activities, the examples, the practice sessions that the employee will go through during the training program. And the last thing we had to look at were the behaviors that we wanted the employees to actually exhibit. So we're defining here how they will act when they're performing the task. So we wanted to focus on quality, so the box was easy to open. We wanted to make sure that the package was secure. Hello? In terms of, so it would survive the transport as in good shape. We wanted to make sure that the sealing was good and the amount of tape was not excessive. And we wanted to make sure that the accuracy of labels was maintained because the courier had requirements around that. So we're actually defining how the employee will act during the performance of the task.
Right. Mm-hmm. Definitely. After you've kind of gone over the skills, experience, knowledge, behavior, I wanted to take a look at some of these photographs that we have of the open box experience that you've been talking about.
Certainly.
How can competent employees improve the customer experience? And so you can see there's definitely a drastic difference between these two images.
Well, let me explain that, because this actually happened to me. I had gone to a new tea store. I'm not a tea drinker, I'm usually a coffee drinker, but I wanted to try some tea. So I went to the tea store, and the box that I purchased was arranged like the one you see on the left. Everything was neatly done, carefully placed, color matched, so that it had a certain look and feel to it. So after I used up the tea, I thought, well, I'll go back to the store and I'm going to buy another box of tea. And so I picked up the same brand, same assortment, same name, everything. And the box on the right is what I opened up to. So notice that the packaging is gone, the labeling is gone, and I don't know which tea is which. It's kind of like a big surprise after you hot the pot and put the tea in.
Not a surprise you necessarily want, though.
Exactly, because I'm not a chamomile tea person. So what this told me was there was a time when this company thought that the quality of the product, the look and feel of the product, the appearance of the packaging counted, it mattered. And I developed a perception about the company based on the packaging, because that's the only experience I had with them. Mm-hmm. The second box was a jumbled mess. I wasn't very happy about it. I still used the tea, but I thought, no, this is not the same company, not the same perception I was having before. But I'd give them another chance, so I bought a third box, and it looked like the box on the left, or on the right rather. Still a jumbled mess. So what I realized was that the quality of the packaging had changed. Someone had made a decision that the box on the left was probably too expensive or took too much time to package that way. So they go to a cheaper method. The problem, though, was that my perception was based on the nicely packaged box, not the one that was jumbled together. So I changed my mind. I never bought tea from that company again, and I went to find another supplier. So they lost a customer because they did not match the perception throughout the buying process.
Definitely. No, that's completely understandable. And so I would definitely say that in terms of the open box experience, standardization is very, very important, which certainly leads us to building standardized work instructions for your end users.
Right. So we use a system called WHYSEEQ. We developed it, and it's based on 7 questions. So we want to find out what's involved in the job, how the task is performed step by step, and why the task is important to be performed that way. So once we've identified that, that's the top sort of 3 questions. We then take a look at the process a bit more deeply, and at the how level, we identify safety information, equipment information, environmental controls, and quality of the product information. And we embed that at the step level so that it supports the training program, it supports the equipment maintenance and correct use requirements that the organization has, deals with some environmental issues, and certainly defines exactly what the quality is going to look like from the product coming out of the process.
Definitely, definitely. So as promised to our audience, we are going to talk a little bit about Dozuki and how, we certainly align, Sean, with everything you're saying. Dozuki is, again, the visual online platform for documentation. We're documentation tools for the innovative companies, and we work with a huge range, small and large companies all over the world. Just to really ground what it is we do is that companies have the knowledge, they have maybe PDF files of their training manuals, or they have, Word document bullet points or bulky paragraphs of how to maintain a product or to use it, things like that. Well, you have that knowledge, and companies, though, tend to, like Sean was saying, there seems to be, though, inconsistencies in a lot of the ways that knowledge is being distributed, used, and engaged with. And so Dozuki over here, we decided to create a clean, beautiful platform that's highly visual, again, with photos, videos, all sorts of things. And this is what one of them perhaps would look like. And so you can see all the documentation. This is an example guide, with the title. You have right underneath it, a small summary, a concise summary of what you're getting out of this particular guide, time required, difficulty levels there, author. And then one of the really great things that you might not get with other documentation tools like maybe Word or PowerPoint is a bill of materials. So you can see here on the left there's a variety of tools which, if you were to hover over, would pull up a little quick look information on it and click it. If you clicked it, it would go to a more detailed page. And then also on the right column, relevant parts. And so you can see this is a really, really great tool, again, to achieve that standardization, to achieve the best open box experience for whatever it is that your company is doing. And so one of the reasons why we think Dozuki rather thinks it's really important to kind of provide this type of platform is to expose the why, right? The perception of quality we were talking about earlier, matching the customer's experience between the site, purchase process, and delivery of the product, and also the shipper's needs to identify with the bigger effort. So we believe, employees and everything they do should have purpose, should have a level of sophistication. And so again, standardization is really key here, and it really kind of nicely brings together the skills, knowledge, behavior, all those great things that we've been talking thus far. And so here on the next one, I'm just zooming in a little bit into the guide that I showed you earlier. One of the great things that we do is that you can see on the image there's a markup tool. You see the circle on the very detailed point of the image. It correlates to from the red circle over to the red bullet point within the step 2 instructions. And then right on top of that, this curious little box, the data, step 1 data entry. We also, in order to kind of achieve all these really great things that both Sean and myself here at Dozuki are noticing, is that most documentation, work instructions and the like, are not very engaging. They kind of just sit there on desks or workstations. Maybe there's some scribbles in it, but that tends to be just loads of paperwork and hunting down paper trails and everything. What the step 1 data entry, what that's showing you is that we believe that companies, administrators should be able to put in customizable prompts. So you can see it's asking 4 questions. What was the tolerance, the temperature, what failed, and what was the run out? And so that kind of that forces the employees to engage into their tasks, really bring in all that rich data for their employers, things like that, and really help that why out, and also see again the metrics of, are they, is this a successful task they're doing? Is it not? And so things like that. So this is what we're all about over here. And then one more thing, in a way that we also think engaging employees would be helpful, is also to have an area where questions, comments, suggestions can arise and be cultivated. So for instance, whether it is packaging, right, as our example, the employees that are doing that every single day, they're the ones with the hands-on experience. And so they absolutely should have a say in how the work instructions are being written, what order they're in, everything. They're the ones who can definitely give probably the most insightful feedback possible. So you can see, right, there's under this comment section it lands right underneath the guide. So if you were to scroll down the guide, this is where you would see kind of all the engagement. You can turn it off or on depending if you really want this kind of forum experience to happen. But we found that it's been really beneficial to companies in all different industries. And so the final thing that we do really like to share with companies to really help them in the best way possible is we're really excited. We're so jazzed about work instructions and electronic documentation that we wrote the Tech Writing Handbook. And it teaches you how to create everything from manuals to work instructions, where those common pitfalls are, and really how to leverage the most out of your knowledge in a clear, communicative format. So we've got a table of contents that's not only teaches you the best way to communicate, to write, to talk to your employees through the documentation, but also even basic things like how to take a really clear photograph. We cover it all. And this is an example right here for the video instructions. One of the great features, again, with Dozuki is that you can add a video for perhaps more of those complicated tasks, like maybe something like rotation, things like that. And so we even cover that in the Tech Writing Handbook. And it is the Tech Writing Handbook, just to let everyone know, is absolutely free for download. We believe that that type of knowledge should be benefited by everyone. So this is what we're certainly working on, and perhaps why, Sean and myself, we definitely align very well in what we try to achieve, certainly. All right, so the next steps that we want to get into is the training development. So again, how is the training content going to be created? Well, here are some of the things that we've come up with. Well, from scratch, all the content, regardless of score, you're building it all from just your experiences. Based on time to create, the content that is the easiest to create is prioritized. So we see often when companies are creating their documentation, they're putting in obviously the things that are most pertinent, the most used, the easiest, things like that. And then also certainly on the level of risk. Risk is always an important factor. We want everyone to be safe. So content that's most crucial to business success is again prioritized. So once the development has happened with the documentation, certainly deployment is also a big issue. So how is the training content going to be used? How is it going to get circulated? Well, of course, there are three ways for that to happen. Digitally delivered. With software like Dozuki, computer-based training, or using apps on smartphones, tablets. So quick deployment electronically, great idea. Or again, human delivered, the one-on-one or one to perhaps a group of people in training workshops. Or you can do a combined approach. So these are kind of the options for deployment. And then that would lead you into evaluating your effectiveness. So once you've created the content, you've deployed the content, effectiveness is certainly something that you'll always want to be aware of. So performance observation, key performance indicators, or quantifiable metrics, that's certainly what the ultimate goal is, right? So Sean, over to you. Now that I have gone through kind of the importance of documentation development, deployment, effectiveness, why is this approach beneficial? That's perhaps one of the questions that if you're going to overhaul all of your materials, if this is something that you'll want to improve on in a company, why would it be beneficial to the folks out there?
Well, I look at it this way. A lot of people would think that this is a lot of work, But if you look at the example, a company has invested considerable time, effort, and resources to get their products to market. They've built an excellent business model. They've stocked their warehouse. They hired a bunch of staff, and they built a comprehensive, attractive website. That represents a huge investment. And since the business is online, customers never have the opportunity to develop relationships with the people who work there. It's just their interaction with the website. So the only relationship they actually have is with the materials that they order from this particular organization. So in order to maintain good customer service and to ensure that the perceptions are being managed correctly, this company has to really spend some time in preparing the boxes for shipping, packaging them correctly, and making sure that the dots connect. So you want to be able to draw a line from the first interaction on the website to the point when the box is received, the package is opened, and the customer interacts with the product. All of those things, all of those events from start to finish have to line up in order to have a good customer perception being formed. Mm-hmm. So the open box experience, as some people call it, the neatness, the straightness, the appropriateness of the labeling, the correctness of the box, all those sorts of things have to line up in order to make it effective and to allow the company to get some return on the investment they've made for building the product, building the site, and building the business.
Mm-hmm. So one of the questions I want to throw at you is visuals in the training process. How is your experience with like photos and videos?
Well, a lot of the time we're working with employees who don't understand English very well. In some cases, we're dealing with people whose language, or English language, is the third or fourth language they've actually learned. So if we write it at a level that is sort of at the engineering level, we're going to probably write it too high for them to understand. So we want to make sure comprehension is important. The second thing we found out is that people in production jobs often self-select those jobs based on their learning strategies. So if you're a hands-on person, you're going to gravitate to a hands-on job. You're not going to gravitate to a job where you're operating on a computer, for example. So what we found is that if we can write it for people at about the grade 5 level, reading level, that's the best sort of comprehension we can shoot for. So the work instructions are very simply written for those sorts of things. Another thing we find, and we've seen a lot of experience with this too, is that visuals count more than words. And video counts way more, than images. So if you can show a video of how to do the task, and we're working on one project right now that will be language independent. Even if you don't speak English, it won't matter because all you do is follow what the video shows you to do. So those are very strong experiences we've had in developing training.
Great. Well, we see our audience, they've answered another quick poll of ours. How much do you use visuals in your training material? And most said either often, most of the time, or just sometimes. And then on the bell curve, we've got always and never, always at 27% and never at about 7%. So we're seeing actually a pretty good amount of people in our audience who have had experience using visuals, photos, and videos in their documentation. So that's a really great sign.
That's great.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to ask you. So we've kind of been talking a little bit on the end of what companies can do for their employees, creating the documentation, evaluating. Skills, behaviors, things like that. But I wanted to draw our attention a little bit to the competent employee. So the question for all of us is how to get employees to focus on competency from day one. That seems to be a big issue. Is right from the very get-go. You want to have a certain standard, so to say, for all of your entire workforce. And so, what are your thoughts, Sean, on the competent employee?
Well, like the customer, you want to have the employee having a good open box experience too. So that means everything you do from the moment that they are selected to be interviewed for the job, right through to their orientation program, their preparation training, their on-the-job training. Everything has to line up so that the employee develops the perception that the organization is really a good organization, a caring organization, and it's a good choice for them to work for. So the managing the perception of competence is a significant one. If the employee knows what a good job looks like, he or she is more likely to be able to achieve that level of performance. If it's unclear, for example, if you take a look at a number of people doing on-the-job training, most people use what's called the buddy system. And the buddy system is usually you're assigned to an employee who's already working there. You may be run through a program, you may not. The trainer buddy may give you almost everything you need to know in order to become a good employee. They're going to retain just that little bit that makes them better than you. And so the buddy system tends to fall down. If you can control the on-the-job training by having well-trained buddies who know exactly what they're doing, then you'll obviously get a much better perception formed in the mind of the new employee. So it's connecting all of the dots and making sure that everything is presenting a good organization, a competent organization, skilled people, all of that packaged together. If you do that, the new employee will pick up on that, and they'll understand that they're supposed to work this way too. Everybody else is, so I might as well join in.
Great. Sean, we've got a question for you.
Okay.
From audience member Kevin St. Clair. Do you find that this method of training resonates better with the up-and-coming millennial workforce than traditional instructional methods?
It's interesting because if you're looking at what millennials are looking for, they're looking for some control. They've had it before. Growing up, they want to continue having it. This is a great way to give them control of the learning process.
And so, what do you? Can you maybe explain a little bit what you mean of control?
Okay. Well, the learner is in control of the learning process to some extent. They have control over their interaction with the Dozuki product, for example. They have a role to play in the learning process itself. If you're working with buddy trainers, they have more interaction that way than they may have normally. And they also have input to not only the training process, but formulating questions on how the process is done, why it's done that way, etc. And one thing I find, if you tell the employee why we have to do it this way, they're more likely to comply. So one of the reasons, or one of the ideas behind training millennials is that you have to tell them the whole story. And telling them what to do is the most common way of training, but telling them how to do it and why it's important is a much more significant event for them.
Definitely. It sounds like you're helping them achieve a level of agency, certainly empowering them, and definitely independence is important, I think, for especially employees of the millennial generation. Is
very true.
What they're owning, what they're doing is great.
So I hope that answered the question, at least a little bit anyway.
Yeah, certainly. So we've actually, we're about wrapped up. We wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. Sean, was there anything that we perhaps didn't get to that you wanted to make sure that our audience understood before we start to wrap up?
No, I think we've covered a great deal of ground today. I think that if we can help employees understand the work they do has impact on customers, employers, and their own work experience, if we can help them to understand that, we can then focus on helping them understand the details that's involved in the job, and helping them to develop the skills, knowledge, and experience quickly. The one thing that we've noticed with our methods of training is that the training programs actually are much shorter than they normally are in the more traditional classroom method. We've seen situations where we've taken training programs that were 8 hours long and got them down to 45 minutes, but ended up with a more competent employee. And the other thing we've seen coming out of the supervisory role is that supervisors really appreciate the fact that employees are more competent quickly, and that saves them a lot of time, effort, and resources on the back end.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Sean. We really, really appreciate you coming online today and kind of giving us some insight. Again, everyone, please feel free to either email Sean or myself. Our emails are shown right there at the bottom. Sean, if you want to pick his brain a little bit more. And then also, if you were interested in talking a little bit about Dozuki, our platform perhaps, feel free to contact me. We are happy to show demos, webinars to talk to you a little bit about your particular needs as a company. And again, just so everyone knows, a recording of this entire workshop along with the PDF file will be available online for you to have for yourself to distribute amongst other colleagues. We really want this information to be available to whoever is interested. So again, thank you all so much. Sean, you're fantastic. We are so glad to have such a great relationship over at the Digital Mentor Group. Definitely.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I was glad to be here, and I hope it was a learning experience for everybody.
Yes. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye now.